There are currently thousands of men, teenagers and boys up and down the country excessively concerned with how they look. Muscle dysmorphia, also known as bigorexia or reverse anorexia, is an anxiety disorder which causes someone to see themselves as small, despite being big or muscular. It's now feared that 1 in 10 men training in gyms across the UK suffer from muscle dysmorphia. This number is also likely to be much higher. Most cases go unreported for fear of judgment. Over the last 30 years, the idealised male physique has become bigger, more muscular, and harder to achieve than ever before. What's driving a generation of young men to give up so much of their physical and mental well-being for this pursuit of physical perfection?
I always wanted to be leaner, and I never really had these thoughts, or I never really had a moment where I was unhappy with my body until I really started this journey of training more. It started to become a bit of an addiction for me. It took over so much of my life. It's just a little bit sad that I couldn't get that validation from something else in my life. I really want to get into the ins and outs of why do we hate our bodies so much? Like, when did this start? First of all, we're getting Leon on, who is a sports and exercise psychologist. He's also doing his PhD in body image and muscle dysmorphia, which is great. So I really want to get to the science of it, really. Like, when did we start becoming so obsessed with body image, and why, as blokes, why aren't we talking more about it? Where does it, I suppose, stem from, this kind of internal just dislike for our bodies?
But the thing is with us as men, we're in the infancy of our, let's say, body image insecurity sort of phase, this kind of being objectified. Women have had this for, centuries, and we've only had it for the last 3 decades or so. So we're a lot behind them. So we're going through the waves at the moment. But on top of that also as well, there's new pressures with the social media. So we're in, unfound territory, and it's trying to navigate how we sort of do so with that. So I think a lot of it is learning from movements like that, but also understanding now that masculinity is changed vastly. Before it was, men were meant to be...
our father's generation.
Yeah, our father's generation. Men were meant to be strong, men were meant to not cry, share one's feelings, breadwinners. But the world has evolved vastly, and trying to sort of unsubscribe from those old sort of traditional masculine ideals.
And body dysmorphia for men is something that is vastly unspoken.
Yes.
How are you diagnosed with that?
Exercise addiction, first and foremost, it's not a clinical diagnosis. It has no classification. It often sits within various things, being, let's say, anorexia, muscle dysmorphia. But its key sort of elements is aspects such as anxiety, guilt, so emotional turmoil when one is unable to exercise. I think I mentioned earlier on about tolerance, so this need to constantly increase the amount. So, I did 5 times this week, now I need to do 7 the week after, etc., etc. There's also a lot of time spent engaging in exercise and seeking out opportunities to exercise, so it becomes very consuming in one's overall sort of life. Also as well, it interferes because of the time with other facets of your life. So when I mentioned earlier on the conflict that it can cause in other domains, being social, academic, career, you would choose to exercise over, let's say, in a critical meeting at work.
What impact have you seen that social media's had on that?
Social media can have a huge impact, because what social media affords is social comparison. So social comparison is sort of innate in any kind of body image disturbance that we have. Before it was magazines, it was what TV fed us. But the thing about magazines and TV, we would have to go out and seek those. We'd have to go to the shop to see that. We'd have to turn on the television to actually see these disseminated ideals. But now we have them in our pocket with easy access and copious amounts of it. So social media, if we're invested and we internalise societal ideals, is a very problematic place. So because social media, Instagram, etc., it includes millions and billions of people. Before, we may only see one ideal, but there could be an abundance of ideals. And yes, cultural science may say it's the Kim Kardashian or it's this or that, but there's loads of different individuals with ideal bodies which you'd want. So there's just an abundance of things that you can see and think, oh, I'm not like that, I'm not like this, I'm not like that. And obviously we need to consider the fact of, you know, these particular social media accounts can be filtered also as well. So it's a representation of one's best self often also as well.
Opening up about the discussion, for men especially, to say, hey, I don't have an eating disorder. I think that vulnerability to get out of from a man is tough, right? Because it's normally a feminine issue, an eating disorder, anorexia, bulimia. You internalize those struggles, you internalize those feelings of anxiousness, of not being good enough. They build up somehow, and you know, in some cases, worst case scenarios, we know that the suicide rate for men massively outweighs the suicide rate for women, because a part of it is that we don't have the confidence to step forward and start that. What would your advice to be anybody out there who feels like, oh, I might be exercising a little bit too much, it's damaging my relationships, I don't want to go out and see friends?
First of all is to identify why it is you're doing it. You know, why is the reason you're doing it? Is it because it's trying to fulfill some kind of self-worth or self-esteem sort of issue? And then identifying that, then you can sort of move from that point on, because most likely it is, if I exercise, then I will reach this particular aesthetic, and if I reach this particular aesthetic, I then have worth. So it's about getting to that point.
And from a friend's point of view, are there kind of telltale kind of points or things that friends could look out for? I suppose we've all got that friend who you might think doesn't eat enough, or perhaps we don't think that, or we think that they're overtraining. Sometimes approaching that conversation can be really hard because people don't want to feel judged.
As difficult as it may feel as a friend to do so, if you are concerned, just approach it, but approach it with a place of sort of compassion, and ensure that it's not feeling like it's a judgmental particular way, because I know obviously a lot of people may think, oh, they're exercising too much, etc. That's not always a key way to sort of distinguish it. Frequency is not always the key way, but if you're noticing they're having mood swings, they're feeling low, they cannot do anything other than exercise, you know, if it conflicts with something else, or they're avoiding particular food groups and avoiding it with, you know, always possible, not just I'd prefer not to. It's like, no, this cannot happen, basically. Then just reach out and sort of ask, you know, why is this? You know, what can we potentially do to support you if there's particular concern? Just that compassionate approach, I would say, for a friend to do.
Perfect. So approach with compassion, don't judge, and just listen.
Yeah, perfectly summarised.
Perfect. Well, I've listened to you talk, Lynn. You've been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much, mate. We'll go for a fist pump because we can't shake hands yet. Thank you, mate. That was brilliant. It's starting those conversations with other guys, and what you said about reaching out to your friends and doing it with compassion, not passing judgment, just listen, that really resonated, because a few years ago, if somebody would have come forward to me and they wouldn't have done it in the right way, they would have just said, you're training too much, you're not eating enough, I would have turned my back on them. We're off to see Ben now. Now, Ben Bidwell, he's a mindset coach, and a lot of his work is around eliminating stigmas associated with what it is to be a man and masculinity. I hope he just brings an honesty to the conversation. You know, it's something as guys, I really think that we all struggle with, but we're not quite there yet at opening up the conversation. Ben, I reached out on social media. I put up a post about muscle dysmorphia, something that is a taboo, I suppose, you know, for a man to admit that he's got a form of eating disorder. What has your journey with your body been? How difficult has it been to confront those demons that you've had?
I just wanted to be accepted. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to be validated. I wanted people to think, yeah, he's a guy. Look at him, you know. And I looked around at other men, and I saw that in them, but I didn't see it in myself. Mm. So I for a long time, I didn't like the way I was, but didn't really know how to change it. You know, it just was what it was. And then, at the age of 18, hit the gym as if my life depended on it. Yeah. You know, and changed how I looked.
And what were you hoping to get? What type of validation were you hoping to get from having bigger muscles?
Yeah, well, like if I'm honest, like everything that came, like it all worked. Like I wanted to walk into the rugby changing room and feel accepted and like I belonged there, and to have like respect from, you know, like, oh, you look like you play a bit of rugby, you know, just stuff like that. Those comments like meant the world to me. For girls to go, he's got a great body, you know, like, wow, check that out. To have a bit of just respect, like, you know, just walking in and feeling like there's, you know, people respect me.
Shoulders proud sort of thing.
Yeah, and like, you know, check me out. And like I did get a lot of that, all of that as a result.
How did it make you feel?
Like moments of validation, you know, moments like in that, but not, you know, nothing was changing internally.
Yeah.
It was just when someone said, God, you look great, oh, that's a nice boost. At the same time, most people didn't give a shit.
I always sat kind of at the bottom end of the scale, always wanted to be leaner. That's some of the things that you said, I think. It's that people walking down the street, perhaps they turn and see, oh, he's really lean, but then life carries on. And then what happens when, or to you, what happened when that moment just passed?
Still feel the same, like occasionally I get a nice little compliment and, you know, I get a bit of validation, but it doesn't, fundamentally it's still pretty much the same inside. Yeah, like it didn't start changing until I started doing the inside work. You know, it's a bit of a cliche, isn't it? But start working on the inside, and everything started to fall into place there. I started to actually realise that people's validation is very short-lived. You know, if you don't change how you feel about yourself, then you're constantly relying on other people to feed you, and people see you differently. And for someone, you might look great, and for someone else, it might be like, oh my God, what's wrong with you? You know, that's not my thing at all. But if you do the work yourself, then everyone else's opinions bounce off you. It's like, okay, yeah, you know, great, nice, but this is how I feel about me, and that's what matters.
For me, it was internalising feelings of I'm not good enough physically, you know, feelings of perhaps anxiety or nervousness because you're not quite sure what's going on. And then as a man as well, there's the catch-22, you internalise those feelings, and then as a man you're probably not really supposed to talk about those feelings. But I guess, is that an initial stumbling block with all men that we all have? Like, because, hey, that's not something that should happen, sort of thing.
So we're not even really that open to change really as men. We don't want to do the work. It's easier to go and get drunk in the pub with your mates and have a laugh in that moment and feel good then. And we can then, if we're not feeling great on the sofa on our own, no one else knows. It's just us. And we'll just bury it and like it doesn't need to be addressed. And you know, my whole philosophy, everything that I've tried to do in life is like, I want to be happy on my own on the sofa. I want to be at my best then. I want to feel great on the inside. So I don't have to go chasing stuff. And I can then go to the pub with people and have a good time, but I don't need it.
It's so nice to hear the views or the journey that you've had. He's very calming, very peaceful. And see, part of me, that's where the issue is. So part of me is that seems like it takes a lot of work. Maybe we don't need to do all of it, but maybe we could do some of it. I think that resonated with me, just a little bit of searching. Perhaps if I could go back to my 24-year-old self when I was in that stage of always wanting to be leaner and beating myself up internally because of it, I could have a different question. I could change the thoughts that, hey, today was actually a pretty good day. I trained pretty hard, and I'm not going to beat myself up about that. So we've come to meet Brett. Now Brett's an actor and a comic. Talks a lot about male body positivity. Now online there's a huge movement for women about being positive in their body. I think last year there was about 11.9 million tags with the hashtag used body positivity. With guys it's not even anything close to that. I'm looking forward to sitting down with him, having a chat about his journey with his own body, the insecurities that he has, and what he's done to overcome those insecurities. What was that first moment like for you when you thought, do you know what, I'm just going to put a photo out of just me with my top off, I'm just going to let people embrace it?
I'd been really inspired by lots of women on Instagram that were talking about like body positivity, and I was like, right, well, I'm not seeing anyone that I can look up to and idolise that's male, that has just like a normal body. Why is there a gap like in this conversation? and then I started to think about all of my close friends, guy friends that like really struggle with their weight and like the way that their body looks. And I thought like, I just wanted to be the person to break that cycle and help men realise that you don't have to have huge pecs and, you know, washboard abs and fit this action man figure to be deemed healthy, to be deemed fit, to feel beautiful. So the analogy that I always use is, if you Google synonyms of the word masculine, you'll find words like rugged, macho, muscly, like all these like aggressive words. And then if you Google the synonyms of feminine, you'll find gentle, emotional, delicate. And I think basically in society, men are held up to a standard where it's almost like we can't talk about our feelings because it's seen as a feminine trait. And that then, if you like dig deeper into that, it comes down to like respecting women and femininity more. The moment we start to do that, we start to realise that to be vulnerable is strength. And from that vulnerability can come open conversations about our bodies and our insecurities. And basically the lack of the conversation there is because men are too afraid to be feminine and softer, or don't feel that that's something that's going to be respected. Interestingly, like all of my straight friends, guy friends, have now sort of started to like seek me out to have these conversations, because it's almost like they see me as this like safe zone where they know that there's not going to be any judgment. Like I work in a fitness studio, so I'm surrounded by lots of instructors and people who are really into fitness, like huge muscly guys, and 99% of them have been like, yeah, I want to talk to you about this because it's something that I've struggled with. So it just goes to show that like that every guy that I know struggles or has struggled at some point with their body. And it just fascinates me that we don't talk about this more.
That's the case point, is that they still don't feel comfortable enough to talk about it. When I reached out, you know, to get you on this episode, and a lot of the feedback I got, first of all, is really hard to get a guy to come on and talk about this. You know, a lot of the response that was taken from this was from partners who thought, oh, actually, I think that's something that my boyfriend or my husband might be going through, and it affects people on all parts of the scale, doesn't it? And so body hang-up's something all guys experience. I've certainly had them. Like for you, starting this journey, was there a particular period when you were younger that you suffered from it at all, or is it something that still lives with you now?
I've always felt that I was like too slim, and just and because of that, like I don't look strong enough, and I don't feel masculine enough because I don't have these like muscles. I'm just not a chunky guy. But there was a spell that I went through, like definitely growing up, where in fact like not even that long ago, probably a couple of years ago, where I was like really underweight, and only now looking back at the photos of me when I'm like really underweight can I see how skinny I was. I was in a really like negative mindset and like actually spiraling with the way I was eating food. And like, there's a photo on my Instagram where I posted and I'm so thin, so thin. And I remember at the time taking the photo and thinking like I could still lose a couple of pounds like off of my stomach.
And why don't you think, you know, just using the word ordinary, why don't you think we celebrate being ordinary enough? Like, is it a social media thing? Is it the impact of the media? Why can't we just celebrate the ordinary, do you think?
It's to do with like the film industry, it's the mainstream media, like every sort of generation of film that we see that comes out, like men are getting bigger and thicker and more muscly. It's like Hugh Jackman, if you look at him, when he first started doing the Wolverine, like, he was muscly, gorgeous, amazing, but now you look at him, he's like stacked. It's like totally unachievable. And I think it was Robert Pattinson really famously said recently that he wasn't going to like get this macho body to play Batman, because he was like, no, it's just setting at this bar so high for all of the little boys that are seeing this, and even like guys like us that are like, well, you know, I want to look like that.
And that's, you know, the Instagram comparison, that women, they're very good at talking about, you know, this impossible beauty standard that's been put out there. You know, for decades they've been going through this, and it kind of feels like now as guys, this is something we're just getting onto, like, oh well, actually there's impossible beauty standards out there for us. But can't really talk about it because I am a man. And it would be great to see on social media like a body positive movement like going for men and everything like that. But I just feel like personally, I struggle to see it happening. And even getting this episode and starting a conversation, I struggle to see it in comparison to what the women have on social media. Do you think there's room for growth there? Like, do you actually think we'll ever see something like what they're doing, or do you think it'll just be something a little different?
Yeah, I think it actually is going to take for the women to lead this conversation in order for it to translate over to guys. Definitely, it comes down to the fact that there's been like, women have been oppressed for centuries, right? As you say, like, it's only recently over the last sort of couple of decades that we've started to see beauty standards for men like increase. But I think it's going to take the feminist movement to be the ones that are going to open up and talk about men, like allow for that breathing room to say, like, guys, like, it's okay for you to feel this way. It's okay to be more vulnerable, to be emotionally like literate, and to gain language around these things. I do think there's room for it. It's just about saying, like, you don't have to fit a certain aesthetic to feel healthy and to be healthy and to feel gorgeous and beautiful. You don't have to. If you want to go out and do like 1 hour of exercise a week, and that is what makes you feel amazing in yourself, and you're keeping yourself like healthy and looked after, that's great. We're not all training to be athletes. Like, just be kind to yourself.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like you'll ever shrug that, the moment where you look at yourself in the mirror and you go, oh, you know, maybe I can lose a little bit more there? Do you ever feel like you'll get rid of that nagging thought?
Yeah, I do. I do. I'm gonna think positively here. Part of me right now is like, probably not, but yeah, no, I do. I think it's always about thinking forward. So yeah, I do, definitely. Yeah. And the brain is a muscle. The way that we think needs to be exercised just as much as our body does. Our spirit needs to be exercised. And if you're looking in the mirror every day and going, you're gorgeous, you have got this, I am enough, we are enough.
Like, I don't know if I'll ever lose that little voice I have in my head. Like, after I've had a couple of big meals, or if I haven't trained for a couple of days, I start to feel sluggish, and kind of you have that internal dialogue of, come on, stop being a piece of shit.
But like, then I suppose then for me it's about like changing the language that we use with ourselves around that, because like, in a way that's really motivational. Like, you're saying that you've had a couple of days where you might have like come off of a routine that normally makes you feel really good. So then like changing the way that you communicate that with yourself and just being like, okay, I've got this, I'm gonna get up today and I'm gonna do this because it makes me feel good. Keeping the goals, keeping what makes you feel good, but going about it in like a healthy way, good way.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for sitting down, having such an open discussion.
That's okay.
About our bodies. I feel great about my body now. I'm never using the word shit in my body again. I'm never tying them together. No. Next time I'm looking at myself in the mirror, I'll be like, you're not a piece of shit.
No, I am enough. That's what I always tell myself.
What he said, what ties into it, you know, the feminine side of that is going to be women that help men get this movement in the right direction. And because he was so, you know, what's associated with feminine traits, right, of being, you know, gentle and kind, he was all of those things. So it made it really easy to open up the discussion. And saying that those feminine traits is what we need to break the barrier down for men. That really resonated with me, because that's the issue that we've got here, right? Coming forward to talk about these subjects. And he openly says, you know, I have feminine traits. That's why we couldn't get more guys to come on here and talk about this, because equally we can't discuss these things because they're feminine, notoriously. Don't be afraid to start a conversation. Sometimes that's the hardest part, right? It's just beginning a conversation. But as I have with the 3 guys that we've had on, I wanted to start a conversation just because I wanted to see how difficult it was. Once you actually get into it, it's not too bad at all, and you're willing to kind of take the armour off a little bit. And there's a moment talking with all the guys, you notice it, just the way they hold themselves, or there's a slight moment, you can just tell that it's something that they can relate to. And I think that's the power of starting this conversation that hopefully other people will have, that I found so liberating, was that moment of, right, I'm gonna say something here. Oh, okay, he took it like that. Oh, that's pretty cool. He has been through what I've been through. Oh, okay, he'll have that conversation with his other mate about that now. That's cool.